Hello everyone, welcome back to a very special video. I'm DTM as always, and we have with us a yearly tradition. We're going to be going over the top 10 meta impactful units of Book VIII. We've done one for Book V, we've done one for Book VI, we've done one for Book VII, and now it's Book VIII's turn now that the final banner has been released. And yeah, we have a lot to cover because this has definitely been quite an eventful year for the meta. And so yeah, as always, if you like the content, be sure to like, subscribe, hit the bell, all that jazz to help support the channel. Only takes 5 seconds to subscribe, which truly does help us channel a lot, and I really do appreciate all the constant support. Now, before we begin, I guess it's important to ask, what do we mean when we say a unit is meta impactful? Now, that is a very nebulous and even more subjective than just asking how good a unit is. But for me, at least, it is important to note that a unit being meta impactful is not the same as a unit being good. What is meta impactful is not the same as what is good. For instance, do I think Milla is the best light season mythic in the game right now? Absolutely not. I think there's Peony, Ashe, Asker, a lot of better light mythics that I would say are more good than Milla. But do I think those three are more meta impactful than Milla? Absolutely not. Milla is one of the few units that defines light and dark season, and every dark defense need to consider her because her isolation effect has a huge impact on how defenses operate. Thus, what is meta impactful is more of a measure of what you need to consider. A good way to think about this is to ask, if this unit did not exist, how would things change, or how much would things change? For instance, if Peony didn't exist, then I don't think things would change that much because you don't really consider Peony when making a dark defense. There are a lot of dancers after all. However, if Milla didn't exist, then you bet things would change a lot, at least when it comes to dark defenses, when they don't need to consider her isolation effect or how to circumvent her isolation defense check. Also, a unit's prevalence, their popularity in being used, is extremely important for meta impact. It doesn't matter how powerful or what sort of unique effects they have if no one uses them. A unit not being used is a unit that you don't need to consider when making your teams or playing matches. Thus, availability matters to a certain extent, especially when it comes to sparking or particularly popular banners. It's not entirely a popularity concept, but it does play a role in what is meta impactful. This also means that units that excel in roles or strategies that are relatively unpopular or quote-unquote harder to pull off is less meta impactful than units that are more straightforward or in strategies that are more easy to pull off. This is especially true when it comes to strategies like Gale Force. Valoria, for instance, is one of the most impactful units you can have on a Gale Force team that can literally make or break your Gale Force execution. But she isn't meta impactful in general because Gale Force unfortunately is not a very popular strategy, especially compared to tanking. Now, it is important to note that how a unit impacts, say, Aether8's offense versus Aether8's defense versus even Summoner's duels are very different. To start, with Aether8, it's a lot easier to impact defense because defense is extremely centralized. Offense is super overpowered, and thus there are only a few archetypes that are consistent enough to be able to find success, and thus it is easier to be common in Aether8's defense, and to make that splash. Offense, by contrast, has a lot more variety and options due to the nature of Aether8 being very offense-favored, and thus it is hard to become prevalent and make that splash because there's just so many different and varied units that are currently being utilized, even in the Vault of Heavens. As for Summoner duels, for me personally, I've noticed that it is very influenced by the greater community. Summoner's duels players, especially those looking to climb the ranks, often help each other and share strats, and often a few teams get copied by everyone else. One of the most notable instances of this is by Dark, whose famous Dark Pasta is often used as the gold standard team that everyone tries to then just copy or use. On their own, like my personal instance of this is with Valentine's Lucina. I personally copied a team from Fieri, which I was very much inspired by because I wanted to use Valentine's Lucina, and Fieri used a team with her, and so I was like, I want to do that. And so I basically stole their team. Yeah, this sort of thing happens a lot. A unit literally can become meta just from a couple of individuals popularizing them. And this is especially true because, again, the more competitive SD players generally have a very tight-knit community to share these sort of strats. For the purposes of this list, we are only going to be considering units introduced in Book VIII. So that means from Ratatasker's banner onwards. And this is new unit introductions. This is not refines or units that have a glow up due to a new skill, etc. This is just considering units. And yeah, only units will be considered, no individual skills, no structures, no refines, not groups of units or archetypes either. And when it comes to emblem units, like Emblem Celica, Emblem Ike, etc., the emblem unit, in order to make this list, will be judged only by the units themselves and what they bring. We are not considering the impact that the ring has. Obviously, Emblem Celica ring is very, very meta impactful, but unfortunately Emblem Celica herself, her combat sucks, and that's not my problem, that's Celica's problem. And so yeah, where she places is solely dependent on her as a unit, not the ring. But yeah, without further ado, let us begin with our top 10 list, starting with number 10. So yeah, at number 10, starting our list, we have Fallen Nurgle, or just plain Nurgle, I guess, since there's not another form of Nurgle. Nurgle came with a very, very powerful bonus in terms of essence drains, and essence drains is very, very disruptive when it comes to the meta. Like, we have to remember, back when he released, the bonus meta was the thing. Like, people were stacking bonuses, triangle attack was still prevalent, extra movement was prevalent, and yeah, him being able to steal all those bonuses away and buff his team with those meant that when you're facing against Nurgle, you have to consider the impact of those bonuses getting stolen from you. And that plays an impact in terms of like the teams that you're willing to run. Like teams that are solely dependent on triangle attack, well, you better hope that Nurgle isn't there. Otherwise, he could just shut down that strategy really, really quickly. And because of that, he became pretty prevalent in Summoner School specifically. I wouldn't say he was that prevalent in other modes. I don't really see him often in Aether Raid's offense or Aether Raid's defense. And generally, despite the specific example of triangle attack, outside of that, Nurgle doesn't really enable team archetypes in and of itself, right? Oftentimes, Nurgle is just slotted in like a Cav line or like a warping team or something like that. He's not a unit that enables an archetype. And in general, most teams facing against him just deal with his bonus stealing. If you're running triangle attack, if that gets stolen from you, you basically just wait until the next turn until you get it back. And that's generally the main way to deal with him. So in terms of like the actual impact on like team archetypes and what you need to consider, it is actually kind of limited despite the powerfulness of his essence drain. Don't get me wrong, obviously that is still something you definitely need to consider, but yeah, probably deserving of number 10 on this list. But yeah, next up we have number 9. So at number 9, we have a unit that I very, very much love using, and that is Young Female Robin. Oh my goodness, Young Female Robin is probably one of the most splashable units that they have released in Book VIII. There's just unparalleled flexibility when it comes to her to change fate mechanic, and the fact that you can swap that out for literally any assist is just insanely flexible for any type of team archetype you're trying to run her in. And not only that, obviously you have the action economy that is pretty characteristic of Awakening these days. And not even that, but like Hush Spectrum, you have to remember, this is when like Emblem Ike was starting to become the king. And so her providing the Hush Spectrum support enables a way to deal with Emblem Ike, and is just in general very powerful support. And most recently these days, one of the most important aspects of her kit is actually her duel button, because as Katria, Bridal Katria, has started to fall out of usage, her ability to grant dual strike is just very, very good at busting through a lot of the prominent saves and tanks that we have right now. It just gives that little bit of oomph. And because of that, because of all of that, because of the flexibility, because of the action economy, she is a meta mainstay in Summoner's Duels, and you see her a lot. Now, the reason why she is low is because despite her being very, very powerful, it's not powerful in the sense that it like changes or shifts or like impacts the meta, right? Like, she is a unit that is prevalent due to her splashability and flexibility. It's generally not a unit you have to like consider when you're like team building or facing off against her. Her power comes from just being very easy to slot in and providing that team flexibility rather than being a disruptor in the meta, for instance. So yeah, that is why she is at number 9. Again, like probably S tier in terms of Summoner's Duels tier lists. But again, this is mainly due to her splashability and flexibility, not due to her disruption, which I think is an important consideration. As I mentioned in the lead, a unit's power does not equal a unit's meta impact. So yeah, with that out of the way, let us move on to number 8. So at number 8, we have honestly one of the best units in the game right now. That is Attuned Micaiah. Like, if you've been following the competitive server tier list in terms of SD, Attuned Micaiah is generally the only unit in S+. And yeah, she's one of the best units in the game. Her debuff just like enables so much power to your own team and can definitely have those huge stat swings to help you like beat that tank or be able to survive their nukes. Like, the stat swing she provides is really, really strong. And not only that, but the cleansing that she has, even though it is only 2, generally 2 is enough, right? And obviously this is not even counting the fact that she has Omni Guidance, which has a lot of movement flexibility. And yeah, again, the cleansing is very powerful against debilitating debuffs. And there are quite a bit, like Stall, for instance, is the big one. But there are others, like, honestly, from her herself. And because of that, she is one of, if not the most used units in Summoner's Duels. Again, the reason why she is this low on this tier list is, like Young Female Robin, she's more powerful in terms of like the splashability instead of like disruption. Like, don't get me wrong, the debuffs is definitely very debilitating to the enemy team, but in practice, that is more of like a buff to your team. Like, you slot in Attuned Micaiah to give your team more power, essentially, right? Micaiah herself doesn't really enable any team comps, nor does it really like disrupt the game plan of the enemy, besides like making them have less stats, essentially. And so generally you just slot her in to give a huge team buffs. In general, there's not really an archetype that is oppressed by her or gains power by her. And I think that's a good way to look at this. Funnily enough, Attuned Micaiah's best counter is Attuned Micaiah. And so it's kind of funny to see that dynamic play out. But yeah, just like Young Female Robin, her power is more in the splashable variety than the disruption variety, which is why she is currently at number 8, despite being one of the best units in the game, especially in Summoner's Duels. But yeah, next up we have number 7. So at number 7, female Robin fans must be feasting this year. We have Brave Female Robin. 2 female Robins in the top 10. You love to see it. And yeah, what can I say? Ice is actually insane at hindering the opposing team. The ability to hinder aggressive player phase especially on release and as we continue throughout the book, has become more and more important as, the meta evolves. And her having that ice forces the opponents to basically slow down, allowing your team to have the opportunity to set up and do your thing. And because of that, she is basically mandatory in a mode like Aether Raid's defense. Like, I've been playing a lot of Aether Raids, obviously, and most good, or most serious defense, think like infantry pulls and whatnot, they use Brave Female Robin because the ice is a very, very good soft counter to strategies like Gale Force. And it's not just in Aether Raids as well. She's very, very common in Summoner's Duels, especially as we get more high threat range units like Celica Ring Felix and Emblem Sigurd. Her being able to have this ice, again, just stops the aggression and allows you the time for you to set up. And in opposite of that, like when you're facing against Brave Female Robin, it is very, very annoying, and you have to be able to deal with being able to clear the ice in order for you to do your aggressive plays. This is why units like Lumera suddenly gained a lot of value, because she is able to get rid of the ice very, very easily. And so that just shows the impact that she has. Unfortunately for Brave Female Robin, her combat is not great, at all. Very little tank busting capabilities. Don't expect her to kill any save tank, or at least any decent save tank. And yeah, unfortunately, unlike Dual Fjorm, her ice doesn't provide complete coverage. It doesn't have the ice on the adjacent squares. There are ways to play around that, and I have done it very, very successfully, but that is something that definitely does hold her a little bit back. But yeah, next up we have is number 6. So at number 6, we have an OC this time around. That's right, it is Hathrin. Oh boy, Hathrin. I think she is single-handedly caused a tank resurgence with the Divine Nectar effect. That, along with Breath of Life, basically just phased out burn damage entirely, right? You have to remember, before Breath of Life and before Hathrin, burn damage was the primary way for nukes to deal damage. And yeah, Breath of Life was the main cause of it to start to get phased out, but Hathrin just put the knife in the coffin, essentially. And so yeah, that being said, she herself, not even counting Breath of Life, basically just brought back tank ball type teams, and thus has become a very common staple in Soren Balls. Soren Balls are back, thanks in part due to Hathrin and being able to provide that tankiness. Obviously, there are units that help with that, like Sethith and whatnot. But yeah, Hathrin is just basically the similar to Atun Makai in the sense that she really, really buffs her own team. In her case, it is mainly due for survivability. And because of that, she is extremely, extremely common in Aether Raid's defense. I'd say she's probably the best ARD unit right now. I say this, and as of recording, a Laerither, I think, has just released. So maybe Laerither will take the crown. But before that banner, she was the best Aether Raid's defense unit. And yeah, it is because of her that AoE Gale Force has started to become actually somewhat difficult. Beforehand, AoE Gale Force was basically just free, especially with a Brave Felix. But now, it's actually a little bit difficult thanks to Hathrin. And that's not even thinking about her impact in Summoner's Duels. Again, basically revives Soren Balls, essentially, and also acts as a really good frontline and as a really good support options to deal with a lot of the nukes that are currently here right now. That being said, her support is mainly for tanks. You don't really get a lot of value for nuking type teams, and therefore the impact on more aggressive type teams, which we have been seeing a lot lately, is pretty limited. And she herself can only tank. Like, she has no player phase whatsoever. And because of those two things, it's actually a little bit difficult to slot her in. You need to specifically have a team that is defense orientated. And don't get me wrong, if you do have that team, she's really, really good there and has that impact. Like, she's the reason why those type of teams are good. But yeah, outside of that, the impact is pretty limited, and so that is why she has number 6. But yeah, up next we have number 5. So at number 5, we have a spooky unit this time around. Not in the Halloween sense, but in the 6 range sense. Welcome, Emblem Sigurd. So yeah, Emblem Sigurd is the first 6 threat range unit that has decent combat. Sorry, Emblem Saga. You tried. But yeah, it is because of Emblem Sigurd having actually decent combat that actually ushered in a rise of front lines and near saves. Like, obviously, front lines and near saves were starting to get prominence thanks to Celica Brave Felix. But with Emblem Sigurd, that really solidified that direction. And basically, every team in Summoner's Duels has at least a way to deny melee nukes, whether it is frontline, near save, or ice. And because of the 6 range that he has, like, if you're facing off against an Emblem Sigurd, you must adapt either your opening or your team or whatever to be able to mitigate the effectiveness of his range. It's funny that like cav lines were falling off, basically starting to falling off for a while, but Emblem Sigurd with a Gallop basically brought that back. And with Brave Crom, you have like this Gallop Pasta archetype where Brave Crom copies the Gallop, and therefore you have 2 calves with 6 range, and that has become a very prominent archetype in Summoner's Duels. And because of that, Emblem Sigurd is a very, very high usage option for teams in Summoner's Duels. And yeah, obviously the 6 range is pretty disruptive. Now, fortunately, Emblem Sigurd's combat, despite being decent, is not the greatest, right? All of his power is in the AoE, nothing else. And literally so many front lines, near save, what have you, can pretty easily tank him. Like, there's countless times when Emblem Sigurd has failed me, and I get so mad. If you watch any of my Summoner's Duel streams, you would know. Yeah, his combat, despite being decent, is still not that great. And the funny thing is, his AoE Gale Force in his special actually hurts him in a context of Summoner's Duels, because the Gale Force activates when you have that AoE, and the AoE is pretty big, so it's very unlikely you will not activate the Gale Force. Because of that, you'll just like stay in place. Therefore, you can't like Canto away, and pretty much he dies to any mage, and even a lot of physically ranged nukes. And so, yeah, he's kind of a sitting duck once you go in. Obviously, in the sort of rushdown teams you normally employ, that doesn't really matter. But if the team has like the ability to deal with like Emblem Sigurd or has like contingency plans, going just ham with Emblem Sigurd is not that great of a strategy. And so yeah, that is why he is at number 5, even though his 6 range is definitely very strong, and obviously has ushered in that range of near save or like front lines. The combat leaves a lot to be desired, if I'm going to be completely honest. But yeah, next up we have is number 4. So at number 4, going from high aggression to high tankiness, we have Emblem Ike. 2 emblems in a row. And yeah, Emblem Ike was basically the Omni tank for a long while since his release, right? Like, it is because of him that teams have to be able to deal with him. He was the bar to clear, so to speak, that nukes were judged upon. He impacted which nukes were viable, and he was very, very common in Ether Raid's offense. You generally don't really see him in Ether Raid's defense unless they're like not that great defenses. And yeah, like iGreen with the AoE became a very common option because obviously Emblem Ike is pretty weak to AoEs. And yeah, the fact that he was very, very prevalent meant that he had a lot of impact in terms of what the units people bring in order to counter him. Like, that's part of the reason why Young Female Robin was so good on release. It's because she provided the Hush Spectrum, and Hush Spectrum really debilitates what Emblem Ike is trying to do. And yeah, he was prominent in both Summer's Duels and Ether Raids. For a while, he was literally the only good Omni Tank. Like, literally any other Omni Tank was bad besides Emblem Ike. Obviously, as like time went on, we had more options, like Legendary Male Alir is the prime example. But still, he remained a staple in Summer's Duels raid bosses teams. Honestly, raid boss teams probably wouldn't exist if it wasn't for Emblem Ike for like that stretch of time. And that is because of Emblem Ike and his impact on the meta. Unfortunately for Emblem Ike, his player phase is lacking. Like, oftentimes you miss kills against bulky ranged units because he can't actually proc his special. Unless you have like outside support like Nephany, as Oblivion keeps telling me, but like, do you really want to do that? Probably not. But yeah, like, his impact cannot be denied. He was the Omni Tanks that teams had to be able to deal with. And because of that, he is here at number 4. So yeah, next up we have is number 3. So at number 3, we have a very spooky unit, at least when it comes to Summoner's Duels. That's right, it is Valentine's Leon. Oh boy, the Summoner's Duels madness. Before the introduction of Breath of Life, he was target number 1 in Summoner's Duels. His ability to do the end turning thing was extremely disruptive and very, very powerful. As you know, in Summoner's Duels, action economy is the name of the game and is just very, very powerful to be able to manipulate. And in addition, he's a very, very powerful nuke, probably one of the best nukes on release. His really, really big burn damage, like, just flat out destroyed a lot of tanks. And it is that combination that made him so oppressive and made it so that basically every team either like banned him or had to have some sort of strategy to be able to deal with him. And because of that, he was extremely common in Summoner's Duels. For a while, going back to like the competitive face server tier list, he was the only unit in S+, essentially. And yeah, obviously there does exist some limited counterplay before Breath of Life, specifically like recovery skills or like careful team building and making sure like the speed stats are where you want them to be so that the correct unit gets end turn are ways to be able to deal with them. Obviously you could just stack action economy similar to like Young Female Robin. Personally, what I found to be the best is simply just like outmaneuvering or baiting the Valentine's Leon. There are so many bad Leon players. Like, I just leave dagger to get baited, and then a Leon will go in, and then Leon will just end turn, rearm Lucina, who is, by the way, the best counter to Valentine's Leon. Oh boy. And then yeah, Leon then is just a sitting duck, and then the rest of the team is like easy GG's. Obviously, that requires a lot of like strategy and planning. And yeah, it is limited counterplay. Again, it was mainly the introduction of Breath of Life. Not even Kanto Curb Stomp, just Breath of Life denying the burn damage that he has. That was able to basically stop him, essentially. So yeah. Still though, obviously number 3, so very, very meta impactful. I don't think that can be denied. So yeah, next up we have is number 2. So at number 2, back-to-back Valentine's unit, we have Valentine's Myrrh. Unlike Leon, who basically lasted, I think, around like 4 months or something like that, Valentine's Myrrh lasted basically until last month, I want to say. She was literally the best save since release to about a month ago, maybe even a little bit after that. And oftentimes during that range, she was basically the only save worth running, which is saying a lot, right? You have to remember, like, saves were in a very, very rough spot before the introduction of Shield Fighter. And so it was really just Myrrh, and we didn't really get a lot of new saves for a long while. So yeah, it was basically just Valentine's Myrrh. Warp Bubble, to this day, is still extremely disruptive, as it shuts down a lot of the guidance and warping shenanigans. A lot of teams, especially on release and for a long while, relied on warping to be able to have the threat range and flexibility to be able to do trades and be able to confer an advantage in something like Summoner's Duels. Even outside of Summoner's Duels, Valentine's Myrrh was basically the save for Aetherite's defense, having that Warp Bubble be able to deny Gale Force plays outside of turn 1. It is because of Valentine's Myrrh that you start to see a rise in turn 1 Gale Force. And I think that just demonstrates her impact when it comes to that. Like, the rise of turn 1 Gale Force is because of her. Not only that, obviously Warp Bubble directly counters Celica Ring, and obviously Celica Ring is very, very prevalent. It doesn't counter Celica herself, but thankfully Celica sucks, so that doesn't really matter. And yeah, because of that, she is extremely prominent in Summoner's Duels and Aetherite's defense. She was basically, honestly, probably still one of, but she was basically the far safe in Aetherite's defense, was basically the far safe in Summoner's Duels, and as I mentioned, it was only recently, like literally within like the last month or something, that she has started to be outshined by other options thanks to Shield Fighter on the rise. But yeah, her impact cannot be denied. Valentine's Myrrh had a very, very long range. Because of Warp Bubble, she kind of forced alternative strats and long threat range, and turn 1 Gale Force. And so I think that just like demonstrates the impact that she has. Before we get into number 1, of course, we have to mention our honorable mentions. So our first honorable mention is iGreen. Now, I did mention iGreen in some previous entries. Honestly, I was really debating between Nurgle and iGreen on who to have that last slot. In the end, I chose Nurgle, but iGreen herself obviously is a very, very strong unit. Has the AoE that is made her became one of a premier nuke. And obviously her having the terrain avoidance and the +1 movement enabled the sort of like infantry type of teams, infantry like cav teams, I guess, that you started to see. Unfortunately, I do think her reign was shorter lived than Nurgle. Like, Nurgle is still very, very strong to this day. And iGreen, unfortunately, has kind of had a limited time in her reign, and so that is why I ultimately chose Nurgle, but obviously iGreen here deserves an honorable mention. Next up, we have the Winter Banner. Wow, that is like a long time ago. But like on release, Winter Byleth was basically the save to look out for until Myrrh came along. So that was the benchmark. Obviously, I don't think he was as impactful as Myrrh or any of the other units in this list, which is why he's just an honorable mention. And yeah, Edelgard, she basically was the Gale Force unit for a while until I want to say like probably around March or something, when like we started getting Celica Ring, AoE Gale Force, and Felix. But yeah, like before then, like you have defense specifically teching in near save that are specifically designed to counter Winter Edelgard, which I think just shows her impact despite her being an Aetherite's offense unit. That being said, like Gale Force is not the most popular strategy, and even with that, Edelgard, even with like Edelgard being very, very popular, you didn't really see a lot of Edelgard plays that were good. And so yeah, she kind of had a limited impact, which is why she's just an honorable mention. Obviously, we can't talk about these honorable mentions without talking about the skills, even though they are not qualified for this list because we're only doing units. Shield Fighter, obviously an insane skill, basically revived armors single-handedly. Like, Shield Fighter is such an insane skill, provides so much survivability, and yeah, like I did consider Fjorm as like an honorable mention, but really it is just Shield Fighter. Like, it's just Shield Fighter, basically. It's Shield Fighter. It's always Shield Fighter when it comes to saves. I did mention it previously, but Breath of Life as well had a very, very big impact. Completely shutting down burn damage is a very monumentous disruption in the meta. But again, Breath of Life is a skill, so it's not qualified. And of course, unlike Emblem Celica, who sucks, Celica Ring is extremely meta impactful. And yeah, like, her just being able to give the ring being able to give any unit 5 range basically saw the return of melee nukes. Like, single-handedly made melee nukes good. Like, that is kind of insane to think about, because melee nukes were not really good ever outside of like +1 movement calves, right? That's why like Emblem Marth didn't really pop off, but Celica Ring like made melee nukes viable, and so because of that, like, I don't think that impact can be denied. Unfortunately though, not a unit, so not qualified for this list, but definitely deserves an honorable mention. We have some recent banners that we need to get through. Obviously we have Ninja Lucina, who's looking to be one of the best units in the game, especially when it comes to Summoners duels. I really love using Ninja Lucina, but unfortunately it's a little bit too soon, I think, to see where her impact is. And I feel like she's like more of the splashable type of like power rather than the disruption type of power. That is more, that is less about like meta impact and stuff. But we'll have to see how that goes. Tharja is a unit that I personally didn't expect, but we're starting to see specific teams be enabled by Tharja's Anathema, with speedy far saves and the like. And again, we're just starting to see that. So unfortunately, it's too early to be considered in this list, but I'm very excited to see how that goes in the future. And then last honorable mention, we have the most recent Mythic banner. As of recording, I think they literally are going to release in like 3 hours or something like that. So yeah, unfortunately, I can't really put them on this list without having them in the game. I don't, especially considering like placements or whatnot, I don't exactly know how they will place. And in general, I think it takes around like 2 months to determine whether or not a unit is meta impactful, truly. But I will say, just from first impressions, they're looking to be very, very strong. The giving out a signed decoy seems pretty disruptive, and Nidhogger herself is extremely tanky and might be like the new save, if you know what I mean. So yeah, those are the honorable mentions. And yeah, without further ado, last but certainly not least, we have number 1. So at number 1, I don't think this is really a surprise. He is prevalent in every single mode. That's right, it is Brave Felix. Brave Felix, what do you say about Brave Felix? I think he has literally everything he needs and more in his kit. Like, his action eco, being able to just end turn and get another action, being able to move and then get another action, being able to have a built-in Gale Force for more actions. That is just a lot of action economy and provides a lot of flexibility and effectively extends his range, right? Like, if you face him in arena, you have to consider the fact that he will move and then move again, which means he has a lot of long range. And yeah, that is extremely disruptive and threatening. Not only that, but he has built-in DC and is surprisingly very tanky. Like, there are a lot of units that are just not able to get through Felix tankiness, and that combination allows him to do like hidden sit if like you made a mistake or something, or in something like Summoners duels, you can target the units that can actually kill Felix with Felix, and then the rest of the units can't really deal with him, which is extremely strong. And yeah, obviously Him combined with Celica Ring is actually insane. He is the perfect partner with Celica Ring. And if you see a Felix, it's generally a Celica Ring Felix, unless they're trying to like bait you, right? Brave Felix basically, again, has everything he needs to be very, very good in every single mode. He is a premier melee nuke in Summer's Duels. I'd say probably the first good melee nuke this year, thanks to Celica Ring. And again, that strategy of him just going in with Celica Ring warping to take out a unit that can actually take out Felix and then have the rest of the team basically ting against him. That makes it so that, you know, you have to make sure, facing against a Felix, that you have the units to be able to take out Felix, which I think just shows that impact. Obviously in Aether8's offense, as you've been seeing with my videos, he is a premier Gale Forcer. The -2 cooldown, the super slaying, makes AoE Gale Forcing very, very easy, and him being able to basically ignore traps is also extremely strong, and makes him the best Gale Forcer, to the point where, again, part of the reason why Ice is so good is because it denies Celica Ring Felix the spaces needed to warp in order to actually engage onto the team. And so that, again, shows that impact. And obviously, he's very common in Aether8's defense. His ability to have that built-in Gale Force means that he can take out multiple units, which is really, really good because there are very, very annoying sack players that do not deserve to be in Vault that will keep going despite losing a unit. And so being able to kill 2 units will really help cripple that team to make sure you actually get that win. Yeah, I think his impact cannot be understated. Like Emblem Sigurd, it is the reason why Ice and Near Save start to rise into prominence. It is because of Brave Felix that we are starting to see more melee threats and forcing opposing teams to consider those melee threats. And yeah, that is my top 10 meta impactful units of Book VIII. And yeah, obviously a lot of very interesting additions, very impactful additions. And yeah, that is my list. Do let me know down in the comments what your top 10 list will be, what new addition you think impacted the meta the most, what unit you think I should have included or anything like that. I always love hearing other people's thoughts on this, especially in something like FEH where we have a wide variety of opinions. And yeah, let me know down in the comments. And yeah, hopefully you all enjoyed this. Be sure to like, subscribe, hit about all the Jazz Tales for our channel. Only takes 5 seconds to subscribe, but truly does help us channel a lot. And I really do appreciate all the constant support. And yeah, see you next year when we do this again for Book 9. And yeah, hope you all have an amazing rest of the day, and see you all next time. Bye everyone.